The first night, I stood outside the dining hall and counted the windows. 14. All lit the same yellow. Behind one of them, 90 people were eating supper in complete silence, and I did not know which window was mine. My husband's hand found mine in the dark. "You'll learn the bell," he said. I did not ask what that meant. I was too tired to ask anything. I had left everything I understood about God, family, and supper tables, and I had traded it for a bell I had not yet heard ring. I did not know yet that the bell would decide the rest of my life. My name doesn't matter much for this story. What matters is where I came from. I was raised Amish, in a small settlement where horses still pulled our buggies down gravel roads, and where my mother's kitchen smelled like cinnamon and lamp oil every single morning of my childhood. I thought I understood plain living. I thought I understood the community. I was wrong. Not because Amish life is small, it isn't, but because Hutterite life is something else entirely. And nobody tells you that before you marry. If you've ever left one world for another, a hometown, a church, a family system, a marriage, you already know the feeling I'm describing. Stay with me. This one gets complicated in ways you won't expect. To understand what happened to me, you have to understand what a colony actually is. Hutterites are not Amish. People confuse us often. Both groups come from Anabaptist roots. Both wear plain clothes. Both avoid the modern world's noise. But Amish families own their own land, their own homes, their own tables. Hutterites own nothing alone. Everything belongs to the colony. The washing machines, the chicken coops, the children's shoes, even the coffee cups in the cupboard. You eat together. You work together. You are paid nothing, because money belongs to everyone, or to no one, depending on how you look at it. I did not grow up like this. I grew up believing a woman's kitchen was her own small kingdom. At the colony, the kitchen was not mine. It was ours. All 90 of us. My days began at 5 in the morning, with the sound of boots on wooden stairs. I peeled potatoes beside women I barely knew, my hands raw from the cold water, steam rising off the sink like a small, private fog. Nobody spoke much in the morning. There was a rhythm instead, the clatter of pots, a rooster somewhere far off, the smell of scalded milk. I liked the rhythm. I did not yet understand what it was protecting. My husband worked in the fields. I saw him at meals, across a long table, his hands folded the same way every time, like a habit older than memory. We were young. We were in love. We believed the colony would simply absorb us, the way a river absorbs rain. The bell rang for supper on a Tuesday, same as always. I was late. Only for 4 minutes. I had been folding laundry for my husband's aging aunt, who could no longer stand for long. I thought that was a good reason. Nobody yelled at me. Nobody said a single unkind word. But at the table, a small space had already closed where I usually Saturday. Someone had quietly filled it. And no one moved to make room again. That was all. 4 minutes. A closed space. Nothing more. I did not know that Tuesday would haunt me for years. To understand what that closed space meant, you have to understand something about colony life that no one explains to outsiders. There is no punishment system built on anger. There is only rhythm, and belonging, and the quiet cost of stepping outside it. Nobody believed they were teaching me a lesson. The woman who filled my seat likely didn't even notice she had done it. She was hungry. She sat down. That was all it was, to her. But I noticed. And once you notice a system like that, you cannot stop noticing it. The colony does not run on rules written on paper. It runs on 1,000 small agreements, made without words, generation after generation. Everyone protects the rhythm. Everyone believes they are simply living correctly. No one is the villain. That's the hardest part to accept. The weeks after that grew heavier, slowly, like a coat left out in rain. I began arriving at meals 10 minutes early, just to be safe. I began watching how the older women folded napkins, how they timed their steps to the kitchen, how they never, ever seemed late for anything. I started to feel like a guest in my own marriage. My husband noticed I had grown quiet. One evening, he sat across from me at our small window, the glass fogged from the cold outside, and he said the only sentence from that whole year I have never forgotten. "You're trying to become one of us. You don't have to become. You only have to stay." I did not understand him then. I understand him now. There was another woman in the colony, older than me by 20 years, named, well, her name doesn't matter either, only her story does. She had married in from a different Hutterite colony, 3 hours north. She told me, one evening while we shelled peas on the porch, that it had taken her 7 years to stop counting her own footsteps against everyone else's. 7 years, she said, before I stopped feeling like a visitor at my own supper table. She smiled when she said it, but her hands did not stop shelling peas, not even once, the whole time she spoke. I realized then that this was not my story alone. It was a pattern, repeating itself quietly in every colony, every generation, every woman who married from somewhere else. And yet, I want to be honest with you. There was so much beauty in that place. I watched children raised by 90 adults instead of 2, never once left alone, never once unwatched, never once unloved. I watched elderly members cared for in their own rooms, inside their own community, until their final breath, surrounded by familiar hands. I watched meals shared without waste, without hunger, without one family eating better than another. The same system that closed a space at a supper table also caught every person who might have fallen through the cracks of a lonelier world. I cannot tell you it was cruel. I can only tell you it was complicated. The moment everything changed for me did not happen through an argument. It happened one winter evening, watching the older woman who had once filled my seat. She was tucking a blanket around her own grandson at the long dining table, her hands slow and certain, her face soft in a way I had never noticed before. And I understood, all at once, sitting very still with my hands in my lap, that she had not closed my seat to punish me. She had simply been protecting the only kind of safety she had ever known, a rhythm so old it no longer felt like a rule. It simply felt like love, worn down into habit. I was not an outsider being tested. I was a stranger learning the shape of a family's very old fear of falling apart. That understanding broke something in me, quietly, without a single tear. I sat with that thought for a long time. Rain against the window. My husband's coat by the door. The lamp burned low, the way it always did after supper. I thought about my mother's kitchen back home, the one I once believed was mine and mine alone. I understood, finally, that every family, plain or modern, Amish or Hutterite, mine or yours, is only a rhythm someone built out of fear, love, and repetition, long before we ever arrived to learn its steps. We are all, in some way, learning a bell we did not choose. If you have ever married into a family that felt like a foreign country, if you have ever sat at a table and felt the space around you quietly close, if you have ever mistaken belonging for something you had to earn, rather than something you were already given, I want you to know I understand. You are not the only one counting footsteps at your own supper table. I still live in that colony today. I know the bell now. I know which window is mine. Some nights, I still watch the 14 windows from outside, the way I did on my very first night, and I remind myself how far 4 minutes once traveled inside my chest. If this story felt familiar to you, tell me in the comments which part you recognized. And if you want to hear the second half of this journey, the year I finally stopped counting, subscribe, because that story is coming next.